If you've looked at the Florida real estate headlines over the last few years, you've probably seen some version of the same warning that the condo market is in trouble. With huge special assessments, rising monthly fees, major construction projects, owners trying to sell, and buyers wondering whether buying a condo in Florida is still a good idea. And if you're looking at a beautiful condo today, maybe with an amazing view in a location that you love, I think it's a very fair question. Is the condo crisis finally wrapping up? Or are we just in a different phase of it? In my last video, I talked about the differences between owning a condo and owning a home within a homeowners association, because those aren't just descriptions of what the property looks like, they're different forms of ownership with different responsibilities. Today, I want to take that a step further and talk specifically about condos, because what has happened in Florida over the last several years has changed the market forever. We're going to talk about how we got here, where things stand today, and what you need to look at if you're considering buying a condo, and why I actually think that there may be opportunity in this part of the market. There's also another issue developing around condo financing that we're going to touch on briefly, because that deserves a whole video by itself. But first, to understand where we are today, we really need to talk about what happened. For years, there were condominium associations in Florida that were trying to keep monthly fees as low as possible. And I understand why, because nobody wants to tell the owners, we're raising your condo fees again. People came here to enjoy Florida and the lifestyle that it offers and keep those monthly expenses affordable, which was attractive to both homeowners and the buyers. The problem is that buildings don't stop aging because we don't want the monthly fees to go up. Roofs age, concrete deteriorates, balconies need work, elevators need to maintain, waterproofing fails, and plumbing gets older. And eventually these things have to be repaired or replaced. In some associations, reserves weren't adequate for the work that eventually needed to be done, and some maintenance got deferred. Then in June of 2021, the Champlain Tower South collapsed in Surfside. This unbelievable tragedy completely changed the conversation about aging condominium buildings in Florida. It forced the state condominium association and the owners, and frankly all of us in real estate, to confront something that had much been easier before, which is that you cannot continue to push major maintenance on buildings down the road indefinitely. Florida changed its condominium laws, including the requirements involving structural inspections and reserves. And there are two terms that I think are important for buyers to understand, because they sometimes get lumped together, but they're actually two different things. You have a milestone inspection and a structural integrity reserve study, also known as the SIRS. Florida's current requirement is generally these applied provisions to condominium buildings that are 3 or more habitable stories. All the specific requirements depend on the building and the circumstances. The easiest way that I can explain the difference is that a milestone inspection is about the physical condition of an aging building. It's a structural inspection designed to determine whether substantial structural deterioration exists. Under Florida law, qualifying buildings generally reach that milestone around 30 years, and then every 10 years after that, it needs to be repeated. Although a local enforcement agency can require that initial inspection at 25 years based on the local circumstances, including environmental conditions, such as the proximity to salt water. The SIRS is different, and I would think of it more as a financial planning side of maintaining the building. It looks at major components the association is responsible for, their remaining useful life, and what they're expected to cost to repair or replace, and what reserves this association currently has, and how those future expenses will be funded. It includes things such as the roof, structural systems, fireproofing and fire protection, plumbing, electrical systems, waterproofing, exterior painting, windows and exterior doors, and certain other major items affecting the structural integrity. Existing owner-controlled associations covered by law generally had a December 31st, 2025 deadline for their SIRS reports, with a limited provision allowing certain associations whose milestone inspection report is due by the end of 2026 to complete the two together rather than December 31st, 2026. So one is essentially asking what condition the building is in, and the other is asking what we're going to need to maintain it and how it's going to get paid for. That's when everything really started coming to the surface, and for several years it felt like you couldn't walk into a building without seeing some kind of major renovation project going on. Balconies were being repaired, concrete was being restored, buildings were being painted, elevators being worked on, roofs were being addressed, and common areas were under construction. It was unreal how much work was happening at the same time, and of course somebody had to pay for all of that. In the transactions and the buildings that I was seeing, the assessments were often around $30,000 per unit. Not that that was a standard, there were certainly situations where they were much higher, and sometimes the seller paid the assessment as part of the sale, and sometimes the responsibility depended on the contract and the timing. But those assessments became a major part of the conversation when you were buying or selling a condo. I want to make it clear again that the $30,000 is not a Florida requirement or some standard assessment. That's just simply what I was seeing as a regular, repeated, often general fee. Associations were trying to accomplish two things at once. They had to address the work that needed to be completed on the building, and they also had to prepare financially for future maintenance rather than continuing to push those expenses onto the next generation of owners. Florida's current rules restrict covered associations from simply voting away required reserve funding for SRS components, although the law does provide specific funding options and limited exceptions. Fast forward to today, and from what I'm seeing on the ground, it feels much different. Do I think the condo crisis is completely over? I wouldn't say that, because every association is different, but for the most part, it feels like we've moved beyond the initial period where everything seemed to be happening all at once. Most of the buildings I'm walking into today don't have the same massive amount of construction going on that we were seeing a few years ago. Many associations have already addressed significant issues, completed projects, commissioned the required studies, and are much further along in the process, while others still aren't there yet, and they're dealing with repairs and reserve funding, assessments, and financial challenges. That's why I don't think you can really talk about the Florida condo market as though every condominium is in the same situation, because they're not. You could have two buildings sitting right next to each other, and financially and structurally, they could tell two completely different stories. One, the association may have dealt with its major repairs, have a current SIRS, healthy reserves, and a plan for future expenses, while the building next door may still be trying to figure out how it's going to pay for the work that's coming down the road. That's the condo market we're in today. Monthly condo fees have also gone up in most of the buildings, and that's something buyers immediately notice. But I want to change the way that we think about that, because a very low condo fee isn't automatically a good thing. For years, keeping those fees was attractive and it helped people afford the Florida dream, but it also isn't sufficient to properly operate, insure, maintain, and reserve for the building. And eventually somebody has to make up that difference. Safety costs money, maintaining a building costs money. And I'd much rather see an association acknowledge what it actually costs to maintain the integrity of the building than keeping the monthly fee low artificially and leave future owners with a major problem. It doesn't mean that a high condo fee automatically means that the association is healthy either, because you still need to understand what you're paying for and what's happening financially. That's why the information available to buyers today is so important. If you're considering buying a condo, I don't want you only looking at the unit. Of course, you're going to look at the kitchen and the bathrooms and the view and the location and all the amenities, but you also need to look into the association. I want you to know what's happening behind the scenes. Start with the association's financials and reserves and look at how much of that money is available, what major expenses are anticipated, and whether there is a realistic plan for funding them. Then ask about assessments, including whether there are any current special assessments, whether they've already been paid for, and whether an assessment is being discussed, and if there are major projects coming down the road that can potentially result in another one. Then I'd want you to have the inspection information. If the building is subject to a milestone inspection, has it been completed? What did they find? was a second phase required? Were repairs recommended, and where do those repairs stand today? I also would want you to see the structural integrity reserve study, if the association is required to have one, and understand what needs to be repaired or replaced and what remaining useful life of those components is, and what the funding looks like for those plans. These aren't obscure documents that buyers shouldn't be asking about, because Florida's post-Surfside framework specifically increased the importance and availability of structural inspection and reserve study information to owners and to prospective purchasers. Then look at major repairs and projects and find out whether the roof is coming up, whether concrete restoration is planned, whether elevators are being maintained, and what's happening with the exterior waterproofing or painting. I also wouldn't overlook the association's documents and meeting minutes, because I really like getting a hold of those. Sometimes that's where you start seeing the conversation before something actually becomes a decided issue. If the board has spent the last 6 months talking about the elevator replacement or a roof or insurance increase or major repair, that's the information I want you to know before you close on a property, not 6 months afterwards. This is really where I think the opportunity comes in for the conversation, because the condo headlines have scared people, and some buyers hear that Florida condo and immediately think assessments, construction, high fees, and problems. But the headline doesn't tell you whether a particular condominium is a good purchase or not. The building, the association, and the documents are what tell you that. And if you find a well-maintained building where the association has addressed these issues, it understands its future obligations, and has a realistic plan for funding them, that's a very different purchase from buying into an association that's still trying to figure everything out. And while we've spent the last several years talking about problems with older condos, there's another side to what's happening here in Palm Beach County that's really interesting, because condo living is not going away. The Florida dream still exists. Just look at downtown West Palm Beach, where the skyline is changing and we're seeing an entirely new generation of luxury condominium development. There are multiple major luxury residential towers either recently completed, under construction, or planned alongside the West Palm Beach waterfront and around downtown. Projects such as Shorecrest, the Berkeley, and the newly announced Edgeworth are just a few examples of how much investment is going into this type of living. I don't want to look at what happened over the last few years and conclude that condos are finished. I think the condo market is evolving. Older buildings are being forced to deal honestly with maintenance and the true cost of keeping those buildings up to date, and buyers have more reason than ever to understand what they're buying into, and at the same time watching a completely new luxury condo market reshape downtown Palm Beach. Is the condo crisis over? For the most part, what I'm seeing, the intense period we experienced several years ago feels like it has settled considerably. But I don't think over is quite the right word. I think we've entered into a new era of condo ownership here in Florida, where there's more transparency, there's more responsibility, and there's a much more greater understanding of that maintaining a self-building has a real cost. For a buyer, that's why due diligence matters so much. Don't decide all condos are bad because you've heard some scary headlines. And don't decide that a condo is safe simply because the lobby looks amazing. Instead, look at the building, the association, the inspections, the reserves, and the assessments, and read those documents, because every association is different. There's one more piece of this story I haven't really gotten into today, and that's lending. We're going to address that in another video, so I really appreciate you watching. And if you're considering a purchase here in South Florida, please reach out. We'd love to help you out with that and answer any questions that you might have. Put them down in the chat. I do read every one of them, and I answer them as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.